This is the Huawei P50 Pocket, a new foldable phone from the China-based manufacturer that is now making its way worldwide. As far as foldables go, it brings a refined and attractive design, but it's a tough sell in the West because of the lack of Google support. I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's see how the P50 Pocket stacks up in our full review. The Huawei P50 Pocket has a compact clamshell design, which unfolds into the shape of your typical smartphone. The form factor is very similar to Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip 3, which has been pretty successful in the foldable scene so far. The P50 Pocket is made of glass, but there's an etched micro sculpture design that adds depth and texture. You could call it luxurious, but some might find it over the top. There's room to be even flashier though with the gold model. This design resembles gold leaves and was created by fashion designer Iris van Herpen. Another unique accent on the P50 Pocket is the cover screen, which is circular to mirror the round camera bump. The style is similar to the other Huawei phone launching right now, the P50 Pro, with its two circular camera modules. But rather than housing cameras, this here is an OLED about 1 inch in diameter, and is quite functional. It allows you to see notifications and interact with certain apps while the phone is folded. The outer display is also highly customizable, with static themes or even fun animations. Let's talk a little bit about the P50 Pocket's hinge design. Huawei says the hinge brings new materials and a new design, and that allows for a tighter fit. The result compared to the Z Flip is quite noticeable. On the Pocket, there's almost no gap at all while the phone is folded, and the device seems thinner and more refined. Plus, the crease on the P50 Pocket's display seems less pronounced too. But strangely, the tighter appearance doesn't mean the hinge itself is tight. It won't stay partially folded, compared to the Z Flip, which will keep the position you leave it in. At least that means you can flip the Huawei open much easier one-handed. There is one nitpick I have with the Pocket's hinge, and that is that it makes a little grinding sound when you use it. And another thing to take into account is that you don't get an IP rating against water here, which the Z Flip 3 does have despite the moving parts. The main screen of the P50 Pocket is a foldable 6.9-inch OLED with a pixel density of 442 ppi and a fast 120Hz refresh rate. The refresh rate can be adaptive or set to be always at 120, and it makes scrolling look quite fluid. And thanks to a 300Hz touch sampling rate, the screen is quite responsive too. The display is nice with deep OLED blacks and a cinematic tall aspect ratio. Color accuracy can be excellent if you go that route in color settings. And max brightness is good too. We measured 520 nits with the manual slider, and it boosts up to 800 nits in auto mode when in bright sun. There is HDR support here, but because of Huawei's software situation, we couldn't get any HDR content from streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, or YouTube. For audio, the P50 Pocket has a pair of stereo speakers. They have good stereo separation, but unfortunately they also appear to be underpowered and scored a below average mark on our loudness charts. You can get 256 or 512 gigs of storage on the P50 Pocket, and that's even expandable if you use a Huawei Nano memory card. And for biometrics, the P50 Pocket has a side-mounted fingerprint reader. It's extremely accurate and responsive. Let's talk software. It's one of the main things to consider when getting a Huawei phone. The interface here is EMUI 12, which is actually based on Android 11. It's pretty clean and easy to navigate, and the functionality is provided by Huawei's app suite, not Google's. One difference you can see in the layout is that quick toggle settings are organized into a control panel, accessed by swiping from the top corner. And on the P50 Pocket, the virtual assistant is named Celia, and she brings your typical voice-activated commands and search functions. One major difference from Android phones is that there is no Google Play Store here. Instead, you get Huawei's app gallery. It works okay, besides the ads you see here and there, and the more limited app selection. A lot of the available apps, especially games, are not what we're used to seeing here in the West, and unfortunately some of them do come with plenty of ads. Your other option is to sideload the apps you want, and Huawei even supports this. The search function within the app gallery can find online APK files for apps that you might want to install. But even so, there's no way to get apps that require Google services to run correctly. Unlike the Galaxy Z Flip, you don't get special functions based around the phone being half folded, except for the camera app, which migrates the viewfinder to the top. There are some other features that take advantage of the unique design though. You can set up a super privacy mode that can automatically restrict access to the camera, microphone, and location services when the phone is closed. And there's a fun feature called Sunscreen Test, which uses the phone's ultra spectrum camera and UV emitter to detect where the product is on your face. You'll need to look into the rear cameras and use the cover screen for it to work, and I guess it's handy if you want to make sure you get great coverage. Powering all of these features is a high-performance Snapdragon 888 chipset, which is the same that you'd find in most of last year's Android flagships. The difference is that this one doesn't have a 5G modem, so you'll be limited to 4G network connectivity. But still, chipset performance is excellent and every bit flagship grade. The main limitation you'd find on the P50 Pocket though is thermal management. Flagships and their high-powered silicon aren't well known for this to begin with, but it seems the compact design of the Pocket doesn't help. The phone will heat up and throttle under heavy use, and even the display refresh rate will dial down when the temperature rises. Let's move on to battery life, and it seems that again the P50 Pocket's design doesn't do it any favors here. Despite a decent-sized 4000 mAh battery, the Pocket was only able to score a meager 66-hour endurance rating in our battery tests. That's comparable to the Z Flip 3, which has a smaller power pack. Charging is pretty fast though. With the bundled 40-watt adapter, we were able to charge the phone from 0 to 70% in half an hour. There is no support for wireless charging here though, unlike the Z Flip 3. Finally, we've made it to the P50 Pocket's cameras. There's a 40-megapixel main cam, a 13-megapixel ultra-wide which has autofocus, and a 32-megapixel ultra spectrum camera that is paired with a UV light emitter. Let's start off with the main cam, which captures 10-megapixel images by default. These look great, with a good amount of detail and crispy rendition. Colors pop, but they're not over the top, and dynamic range is excellent. If you're comparing quality to the Z Flip, the two are very similar, but the Huawei has the edge. Its photos are slightly cleaner, and dynamic range is a bit wider. We weren't very impressed with the P50 Pocket's portrait mode though. Separation could be better, especially in busy scenes like the wooden wall paneling. And we noticed that after a few shots, the bokeh effect would just stop working. The P50 Pocket's ultra-wide camera delivers solid results. Although the photos aren't the sharpest around, and the colors don't exactly match the main cam, there's a good amount of detail and excellent dynamic range. If you compare to the ultra-wide of the Z Flip, you see that the Samsung's output is consistently sharper. However, the P50 Pocket's ultra-wide has one advantage, and that's autofocus, so you can use it to take close-up macro shots. This provides a lot more detail than the dedicated macro cams you'd find on other devices. Unfortunately, despite the hype, the Ultra Spectrum camera doesn't seem to actually do much, except that it powers that sunscreen detection feature I mentioned before. But the UV emitter is used in fluorescence mode, which will illuminate objects for a blacklight effect. These shots are captured by the main cam, and can do as a party trick if you're in the mood, but not much else. In low light, the P50 Pocket's main cam is quite capable. It captures sharp and detailed images, and controls noise very well. Color rendition is spot on, and dynamic range is excellent, with well-developed shadows and preserved highlights. The Z Flip is considerably noisier at night, and we like the better controlled light sources in the P50 Pocket's photos. Night mode on the Pocket was a bit buggy for us though, often asking for crazy long capture durations. Fiddling with it and getting a 2-second capture resulted in photos that weren't noticeably better than the auto mode shots. The ultra-wide does a decent job in the dark. Sharpness and detail are okay, and there's little to no noise. And dynamic range is great, with preserved highlights. Unlike the daylight scenes, here the P50 Pocket's ultra-wide has the upper hand over the Z Flips. The output is less noisy, and light sources are handled better. But that's in auto mode. Again, we weren't happy with the night mode results here. These took a few extra seconds to capture, and the photos often ended up dark and underexposed. You can take selfies with the 10.7 megapixel front-facing cam that sits inside the foldable display. We weren't fans of these photos. They're soft and noisy. Luckily, you don't even need to use that camera, since the P50 Pocket's foldable design means you can take selfies with the rear cameras, using the external display as a viewfinder. This can get you either the crisp detail, likable colors, and great dynamic range of the main cam, or the wider framing you can achieve with the ultra-wide cam. The P50 Pocket supports video recording in up to 4K resolution at 60fps with all 3 shooters, and electronic stabilization is always on. Footage from the main cam is good overall. Detail is solid, though there is some noise and excessive sharpening. Still, colors are pleasant, and dynamic range is excellent. 4K video from the ultra-wide is okay. It's not the sharpest and there is some visible noise, but colors are likable and dynamic range is good. So that's the Huawei P50 Pocket. You get a foldable design that's compact, symmetrical, and fashionable. The circular second screen is a neat touch, and the inner screen is a nice high refresh rate OLED. The chipset is flagship grade, there's fast charging, and the rear cameras are great too. Now the downsides. I know I might be too predictable in complaining about the lack of Google support, but a lot of people will skip this phone entirely just because of that. But even if you forget the Google thing, there's no 5G or waterproofing, which you would find on the Z Flip 3. The thermal management and battery life here aren't great. The Ultra Spectrum cam is a bit gimmicky. The speakers are on the quiet side, and probably the biggest thing is the price tag. This phone is expensive. So overall, I love the look and design of the P50 Pocket, but as a product, for now Samsung and the Z Flip 3 have it beat, at least in Western markets. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe and see you on the next one.